Do you feel it too? The strange contradiction of our time. We live surrounded by comforts our ancestors could never even imagine. Food arrives at our door with a click. Climate control shields us from heat and cold. Information rests in the palm of our hand, updated every second. By all external measures, life should feel easier, lighter, more fulfilled. And yet, beneath the surface, a silent fatigue spreads. People lie awake at night with racing thoughts. They scroll endlessly, trying to fill an emptiness they can't explain. Depression and anxiety grow in the very societies that appear the most advanced. Why is it that the more humanity gains on the outside, the less settled it feels within? This is the paradox of modern comfort. It was meant to liberate us, but in many ways, it has turned into a prison without walls, a soft cage, one that does not hurt to touch, but one that numbs slowly, until you realize the energy has been drained from your life. The uncomfortable truth. The world has promised us that external conquests equal happiness. Get the house, the job, the relationship, the recognition. And for a moment, it works. The dopamine spikes, the rush comes. But then something strange happens. The excitement fades. The mind looks again for the next conquest. The cycle begins anew. This is not accidental. Entire systems benefit from you staying distracted, always searching, never satisfied. A mind addicted to external validation buys more, obeys more, fears more. A mind that governs itself? That kind of mind cannot be manipulated so easily. So here lies the uncomfortable truth. It is not the external world that enslaves us most. It is the compulsive loops within us. Thoughts repeating like broken records. Emotions recycling without resolution. Inner dialogues that never rest. Freedom, then, is not merely political or economic. It is first and foremost cognitive. The invisible prison. Think of it this way. A person can be surrounded by the best technology, but if their inner dialogue is filled with self-criticism and fear, their chemistry will mirror torment. No app, no device, no new possession can stop the body from flooding itself with toxic hormones created by the mind. That is why so many today, even with unprecedented abundance, feel trapped. Because the trap is not outside, it's within. It is in the patterns of attention, imagination, feeling, and inner speech that repeat endlessly until they shape the entire experience of reality. This is what monks and sages have always warned. They did not spend decades in silence because they hated the world. They did it because they saw the true chains of humanity, the inability to govern consciousness. Cycles versus loops. Now pause and ask yourself, have you ever felt that you keep returning to the same point no matter what changes around you? New job, new city, new relationship, and yet the same emotional weight seems to follow? That is not destiny. That is mental imprisonment disguised as normality. There's a difference between a natural cycle and a compulsive loop. A natural cycle transforms. Night gives way to day. A seed becomes a plant, then a fruit, then a seed again. Inspiration gives way to rest, and rest restores inspiration. A compulsive loop, however, never transforms. It only repeats. The same thought, the same fear, the same anger, circling endlessly. The body pays the price with exhaustion. The mind shrinks into predictability. Life becomes repetition without awareness. Breaking free begins by learning to recognize the difference. To say, this happens to me, but it is not me. That separation alone begins to open space. The system doesn't want you free. Why is this secret hidden if it has always been known? Because a human being who governs their own state is far less useful to the system. They do not consume blindly. They do not obey out of fear. They do not cling to collective illusions. Society is easier to control when people are reactive. When you are driven by unexamined loops, you buy when told, you panic when told, you divide when told. But someone who has trained their inner life, they choose. They don't just react. They don't need to be dragged by fear or desire. They can act from within. And such a person is free, even while living in the same society. The forgotten discipline. This is what I call interior engineering, not as a metaphor, but as a practical discipline. It is not a modern invention. It has existed for centuries in monasteries, ashrams, and meditative traditions. It is the deliberate training of attention, imagination, feeling, and inner dialogue until they stop ruling you and begin serving you. Without it, external abundance becomes noise. With it, even a simple life becomes radiant. Look around. We are in the age of constant information, yet people are more confused than ever. Endless stimulation, and yet people feel numb. Why? Because without governing the quality of inner states, every new stimulus is just another hijacking of your energy. The secret the monks preserved was not escape from the world, but inversion. Before perfecting yet another external tool, first learn to consciously occupy the inner state from which you act. Do that, and every external condition transforms from prison into stage. The trap of knowledge. But there is another trap, more subtle, the trap of knowledge itself. We are taught that intelligence means accumulating information, data, conclusions, categories. And of course, this has allowed us to build extraordinary science and technology. But for consciousness, this same habit becomes poison. Why? Because the mind confuses conclusions with reality. It says, I am like this. People are like that. Life never works out for me. These sentences may feel like knowledge, but they are nothing more than rigid assumptions. Each one becomes an invisible mold that filters what you perceive. This is why so many people, even in changing circumstances, repeat the same story. Because the story is not out there, it is in here. Neville Goddard described it simply. Everything that you believe to be true of yourself becomes your law of experience. Each time you silently declare, I am, you give an order to consciousness, and it obeys. So the question becomes, what orders are you giving without realizing it? The practice of active not knowing. The way out is counterintuitive, not to accumulate more conclusions, but to practice active not knowing. This is not ignorance. It is the refusal to freeze perception into rigid verdicts. Instead of saying, I know how things always go, you say, I observe, I experiment. It requires courage, because the mind craves certainty, but certainty is often just recycled fear. By suspending the rush to conclude, you return to plasticity, the ability of consciousness to test new states. This is where imagination becomes powerful, not as fantasy, but as laboratory. When you suspend the old conclusion, you can temporarily assume another state. Try on confidence, clarity, calmness. Not as a pretense, but as an experiment. Hold it long enough until the body begins to respond. Then you realize this, too, can be real. The 4 instruments. Let's be practical. There are 4 instruments you carry everywhere. Attention, imagination, feeling, inner speech. Whoever governs these governs their experience. Whoever ignores them is governed by them. Think of attention as the steering wheel. Wherever it rests, your energy flows. If you let it rest on fear, the body produces the chemistry of fear. If you direct it toward a calm image, the body relaxes. Imagination is the engine. The body does not distinguish between vividly imagined images and physical reality. This is why rehearsing catastrophe makes you sweat, but also why rehearsing peace can calm your heart. Feeling is the fuel. Whatever you feel deeply saturates the body and, repeated often enough, becomes identity. Inner speech is the programming. Every word you say to yourself is an instruction. Say, "I have no way out," and the body obeys. Say, "There are solutions I don't yet see," and suddenly the mind starts searching differently. Most people use these four unconsciously, which means they live trapped in states they never chose. But once you start using them deliberately, they become the keys to real freedom. The threshold of sleep. Neville pointed to one particularly powerful moment, the threshold of sleep. At this time, the critical mind is resting, and new assumptions can sink more easily. Most people replay their failures before bed, planting tomorrow's anxiety. But you can choose differently. Review your day and revise it. Where you reacted poorly, imagine it resolved. End the scene the way you wish it had ended. Hold it until you feel the relief. Then drift into sleep with that as your final impression. Do this consistently, and you re-educate memory itself. The body begins to believe the corrected version, and the days ahead start reflecting it. Education as cultivation. Let's broaden the view. This is not only personal, it is social. Think of how we raise children. We raise them like cattle, molding from the outside with fear, punishment, reward. But what if education was not raising, but cultivating? To cultivate is to provide conditions for inner intelligence to bloom. A calm parent transmits calm more than any lecture. An anxious teacher, no matter the content, transmits anxiety. State is contagious. A child who sees adults govern their inner states silently learns to do the same. They learn to interrupt loops, to name emotions, to use imagination constructively. That is true education, not indoctrination, but training for autonomy. And here lies the danger for systems of control. A society of autonomous beings is hard to manipulate. Leaders cannot easily exploit collective fear when individuals know how to calm themselves. Propaganda loses force when people know how to choose their inner state. Intensity versus longevity. There is also a myth about potential. People believe it is a fixed destiny, something out there to be reached, a point of arrival. This produces endless comparison and anxiety. But if consciousness is cause, then potential is not a place, it is a trajectory. The raw material is always the same, time and energy. What differs is how consciously it is invested. 1 year of focused attention can carry the depth of decades wasted in distraction. The math of intensity is different from the math of longevity. It is not about how long you live, but how consciously you live each moment. Freedom is not a distant promise. It is the quality of the now. So, how do we begin? Let me offer 3 small practices you can try immediately. State separation. The next time a heavy emotion grips you, say quietly, "This is happening to me, but it is not me." That fissure loosens the loop. Revision at night. Before sleep, take one scene from the day you regret. Imagine it concluded differently. Stay with the relief until you drift off. Conscious speech. Notice one phrase you often repeat about yourself. "I am always anxious," or "I never succeed." Suspend it. Replace it with "I am learning calm," or "I am capable of progress." Repeat until it takes root. They may seem simple, almost too simple, but the body obeys repetition, not complexity. What is planted repeatedly becomes real. We began with the paradox of modern comfort. The world offers more than ever, yet people feel emptier than ever. The reason is clear now. External conquests cannot substitute for inner mastery. You carry 4 instruments: attention, imagination, feeling, inner speech. Used unconsciously, they enslave. Used deliberately, they free. The prison of modern life is invisible, built from compulsive loops. But the key has always been within reach: conscious state. So ask yourself tonight, what state will I choose to sustain tomorrow? Because what you repeat with feeling today becomes who you are. We uncovered a difficult truth. The invisible prison of modern life is not built of walls, but of compulsive mental loops. And we touched the keys to freedom: attention, imagination, feeling, and inner speech. Now, let us walk deeper into the heart of this matter. Because it is not enough to recognize the prison. One must also practice stepping out of it again and again until freedom becomes the natural way of being. The real battlefield. Many people think the battle for freedom is out there, against governments, corporations, or external enemies. But the real battlefield is within. Think of it. What use is political freedom if your mind enslaves you with constant rumination? What use is economic freedom if your imagination repeats scenes of loss and catastrophe? The chains are not forged by iron anymore. They are forged by words you repeat to yourself, by images you allow to circulate, by emotions you refuse to digest. This is why ancient traditions insisted on inner training, because without it, you can conquer the world and still remain a captive of your own mind. The chemistry of states. Let's get practical. Every conscious state has a physical signature. When you feel fear, your breath shortens, your muscles tighten, your body prepares to fight or flee. When you feel joy, the chest opens, the heartbeat steadies, endorphins spread. But here's the critical point. The order is inverted. The body does not create the state. The state creates the body's chemistry. Most people believe circumstances made them feel this way. But in truth, the circumstance only triggered a state already available within. And once that state was chosen, consciously or unconsciously, the body followed. This is why two people can live the same event and react completely differently. One collapses in despair. The other finds clarity and acts with courage. The difference is not in the event. It is in the state each one inhabited. Recognizing this inversion changes everything. It means you are never truly a victim of circumstance. You are only a victim of unconscious states. The hygiene of imagination. If imagination drives chemistry, then the hygiene of imagination is as important as the hygiene of the body. Think of how carefully people wash their hands, clean their homes, filter their water. But what about the inner images they allow? Most people let imagination run wild with hostile scenes, arguments that haven't happened, losses that haven't occurred, disasters that may never come. The body treats each of these imagined scenes as real. Hormones are released, muscles tense, energy drains. This is not harmless daydreaming. It is self-sabotage. The exercise is simple but demanding. Whenever the hostile image arises, cut it short. Replace it with a new image, already resolved, already complete, carrying the quality you wish to sustain. Do not wait for proof outside. The proof begins inside. Over time, this new scene becomes the default, and the chemistry of your body changes accordingly. The power of inner speech. Words are not innocent, especially the words you say to yourself. Every I am is a command. Say I am worthless and you decree slavery. Say I am learning strength and you decree progress. This is why Neville warned not to take I am in vain. It is not a religious phrase. It is a practical law. Whatever follows I am becomes a seed planted in consciousness, and the body will seek to confirm it. Notice your inner speech today. Do you repeat phrases that chain you or phrases that free you? Micro acts of sovereignty. The prison breaks not with one heroic act, but with daily micro acts of sovereignty. Deny passage to a toxic phrase. Interrupt a hostile image before it grows. Choose to breathe slowly when panic rises. Replace a loop with a simple scene of calm. These may look small, but each act is like striking at the chain with a hammer. Do it once, the link weakens. Do it daily, the chain shatters. Freedom is not instant. It is repeated practice until the old loops dissolve and the new states stabilize. The threshold between trigger and response. Think of a pause button. Between any trigger and your response, there exists a tiny margin of choice. Most people miss it, rushing automatically into reaction. But interior training widens that margin. It gives you time to say, wait, I will not react from yesterday's loop. I will choose a new state right now. This margin is the true seat of freedom, not in controlling the world, but in controlling the response. The myth of escape. Some people, realizing the prison of society, dream of escaping. Living in the mountains, abandoning technology, withdrawing from civilization. But that is not the answer. The monks did not escape the world, they inverted the order. They trained their states first, then returned to the world with a new center. Freedom is not found by running away from society. It is found by ceasing to be ruled by its compulsions. A free person can live in the heart of the city and remain unshaken, because their state is chosen, not borrowed from the noise around them. Education as transmission of state. Let us revisit education, because this is where the cycle either repeats or transforms. Children do not only learn content, they absorb states. An anxious home transmits anxiety even if it preaches calm. A reactive school transmits fear even if it teaches kindness in theory. The greatest gift an educator can give is not information, but presence. A state of clarity, of firmness without violence, of confidence without arrogance. This is cultivation. When children learn to govern states, they are protected against propaganda, against peer pressure, against the noise of the world. Not by censorship, but by inner strength. The collective mirror. Every society is the mirror of its individual states. If people live in fear, society organizes around fear. Leaders who exploit it, policies that reinforce it. If people cultivate clarity and responsibility, society mirrors that too. Culture is nothing more than the sum of the states that predominate, which means changing society begins with changing states. This is not individualistic, it is structural. A population that knows how to govern itself requires less external control. Leaders lose the power to manipulate. Conflict becomes less toxic because no one reacts blindly. Divergence turns into resource, not threat. The freedom of one mind expands into the freedom of many. Potential as trajectory. We must also rethink potential. Society teaches that potential is a fixed gift. You have it or you don't. You achieve it or you fail. This belief fuels comparison, anxiety, and envy. But potential is not a point of arrival. It is the quality of the trajectory. Time and energy are given equally to all. The difference is in how states direct them. 1 year lived in chosen states can equal decades lived in unconscious loops. The arithmetic of consciousness is exponential. Each choice reorganizes actions. Actions reorganize contexts. Contexts feed back into new states. The effect multiplies rapidly. This is why some people transform their lives in months, while others repeat the same drama for years. It is not luck, it is state. The courage to suspend conclusions. Here is where most stumble. They want freedom but cling to old conclusions. I know how this ends. I know who I am. I know what people are like. But each of those sentences is a verdict that freezes perception. Life cannot show you new possibilities if you insist on confirming old ones. The practice of active not knowing is therefore essential. It feels uncomfortable because it removes the illusion of control. But it is in this openness that imagination recovers its true role as laboratory, not fantasy. Suspend the conclusion, even for a moment, and try on a new state. You may discover you were never as fixed as you believed. The discipline of conscious repetition. None of this works without repetition. Consciousness moves by habit. Old habits of thought created your current life. New habits will create the next one. So the monks guarded the science of repetition. They knew miracles are not sudden explosions, but inevitable harvests of repeated states. What is sown consistently inside appears consistently outside, not immediately, not magically, but inevitably. This is why the work seems invisible at first. You repeat the new state, but the world looks the same. Doubt whispers, "This doesn't work." But continue and the harvest comes. The discipline is simple. Sow daily, reap eventually. Joy as basal state. When loops dissolve, something surprising happens. Joy emerges, not as artificial euphoria, but as the natural state when the organism is no longer sabotaged. Think of a river. Remove the dams, and water flows naturally. Joy is the flow of unblocked consciousness. It is not forced. It is what remains when the obstacles are gone. And from this basal joy, action arises more effectively. Creativity expands. Relationships soften. Clarity sharpens. Because life is no longer a fight against inner chaos. Practical steps. Let us bring this again into the practical. Somatic literacy. Begin noticing how each state feels in the body. Short breath means anxiety. Relaxed chest means confidence. Name it without judgment. This awareness alone begins to free you. Imagination hygiene. Every time a catastrophic scene plays in your mind, stop it mid-sentence. Replace it with a resolved scene. Hold it until the body responds. Nightly review. As you fall asleep, replay your day. Where it ended poorly, revise it to a better conclusion. Drift into sleep with that version. Speech discipline. Monitor your I am. Refuse to attach it to states you don't wish to live. Attach it only to states you want to repeat. Pause, practice. When triggered, pause for one breath. In that gap, choose a state before responding. This pause is where freedom lives. The invitation. The world will not reorganize itself to give you peace. Circumstances will always fluctuate, but you can reorganize consciousness to produce peace, and from there transform your world. This is the secret. External prosperity means nothing without inner maturity. But when inner mastery comes first, even small external comforts become stages of expression rather than prisons of distraction. You do not need to wait for the perfect moment. The door to freedom is always now, in the state you choose to sustain. So here is the invitation. Stop waiting for life to rearrange itself. Stop waiting for conditions to perfect themselves. Begin here with the state you carry now. Attention, imagination, feeling, inner speech, these are not small tools. They are the levers of destiny. Every moment you choose consciously, you break a chain. Every day you sustain a chosen state, you alter the trajectory. And what you sustain long enough becomes your identity, your destiny, your world. So I leave you with this question. If life is a mirror, What state do you want it to reflect tomorrow?